Now we have the basic idea about ASR. So let's move with the real mission. Here you can see we have a primary data center with whole infrastructure, including business critical applications. So basically we have lots of stuff inside this data center. Here you can see we have virtual machines, our physical host, user data, application data, and business critical applications as well. And this data center provide all services 24 by 7. So in any kind of disaster, if this data center went down, so we will be in trouble. So consider that right now this data center is working as a primary data center, or you can say site A data center. So we are trying to design a kind of DR plan which is very cost effective, and we require less effort to manage and operate that DR infrastructure as well. So for that purpose, we already dismiss our secondary site option because when we think about the secondary data center implementation, so it will cost a lot. So for that purpose, we are going to utilize Microsoft Azure Site Recovery Services as a DR service to create a clone or a complete replicated data center on Microsoft Azure. So whenever we're done with our implementation tasks related to the DR implementation, so this data center will be completely cloned to Microsoft Azure Site Recovery. So this scenario known as hybrid model, where you are using your on-premise data center in normal circumstances, and if anything went wrong, you can shift your on-premise data center to cloud services, which is on the platform of Microsoft Azure. So here we have Azure Site Recovery Services overview. As we discussed that on a single web portal, we can easily manage all kinds of implementations, operations, and security related tasks on Microsoft Azure. So let's understand what kind of options available when we are trying to create our clone data center on Microsoft Azure. So for that purpose, Microsoft have 4 major options. Here you can see the first one is Azure Virtual Machines. So if your data center is already on Microsoft Azure infrastructure and you want to create a replica for those infrastructures, so you can utilize this service. So Azure Virtual Machines is completely designed for Azure-to-Azure solutions. In this case, your whole infrastructure is running on Microsoft Azure. On the second option, here you can see if you have on-premise data center on the platform of VMware and physical machines exist or physical host exist in your on-premise data center, so you can create a clone of this kind of data center on Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft is not offer Azure Site Recovery services only for Microsoft services or Microsoft oriented data centers, but it also supports VMware platform as well. And 2 other options are completely designed for Microsoft oriented data center. Here you can see the third option is System Center Virtual Machine Manager, where you can replicate your complete data center to Microsoft Azure. And if you don't have any virtual machine manager services inside your data center, so here we have Hyper-V Site. So if inside your data center all hosts running Hyper-V services as a hypervisor, so you can also replicate and clone that physical host and their virtual machines on the platform of Microsoft Azure Site Recovery infrastructure. So now you have a better idea what kind of facilities and what kind of options available inside this DR plan. So let's move and see what cost cost need to be, you can say, bare if you want to go for Microsoft Azure Site Recovery implementation. So the cost is very, very minimal. Here you can see the pricing model. If you follow or if you can Google it, Azure Site Recovery pricing. So here you can see the cost is very minimal. Here you can see Azure Site Recovery to customer on site. So if you have your on-premise data center and you want to clone your virtual machines on Microsoft Azure, so per machine it will cost only $16. So if you have 10 machines, so you can only pay $160 to create a clone infrastructure on Microsoft Azure. And the good thing is that your first 30 days will become 31 days will be completely free. And if you are on the Microsoft Azure platform and still you want to create a clone infrastructure for your Azure infrastructure, so it will cost $25 per month for each virtual machine. So it means that it's a very low cost DR plan which you can implement for your whole data center implementation. So let's move and start deployment with Azure Site Recovery. So let's move with the next episodes.